There is a specific kind of pain that comes from watching someone pull away from you while every instinct in your body is screaming at you to reach out, to say something, to fix it before it is too late. You know this pain if you are watching this. Maybe she left. Maybe she is still there but distant, already halfway out the door. Maybe you have already sent the messages you wish you could take back, the ones that came from panic instead of strength. Here is what nobody tells men in this position. The urge to beg is not love. It feels like love. It feels like devotion, like proof of how much you care. But underneath it, begging is fear wearing the mask of passion. It is the fear of loss speaking louder than the man who is supposed to be in control of himself. And here is the part that is hard to accept. Begging does not bring her back. In almost every case, it pushes her further away, because it confirms the exact thing she was already starting to suspect, that you need her more than you respect yourself. Today, I am going to show you how to get her back without begging. Not through tricks, not through games, through something older and far more powerful, a way of thinking that has helped men face loss, adversity, and heartbreak for over 2,000 years. Stoic philosophy was never designed for romance, but it may be the most practical tool that exists for this exact situation, because it teaches you how to master yourself when everything in you wants to lose control. Stay with me through this, because what I am about to walk you through will change how you see this entire situation. And if you follow it, you will either get her back on terms that make the relationship stronger than before, or you will walk away as a man who never lost his own dignity in the process. Either outcome is a win. Let me show you why. Let's start with why begging fails, because you need to understand the mechanism before you can fix it. When a woman starts to pull away, it is rarely sudden. Long before she says anything, something has already shifted internally. Maybe she felt unappreciated. Maybe the attraction faded because you became too available, too eager, too easy to predict. Maybe life simply pulled you both in different directions and the distance did the rest. Whatever the cause, by the time she is visibly withdrawing, a decision has already started forming in her mind. Now, here is what most men do at this exact moment. They panic. They start texting more. They ask what's wrong, again and again. They apologize for things they are not even sure they did. They offer promises they have not thought through. They make themselves smaller, more agreeable, more available, in the desperate hope that showing enough devotion will reverse her decision. This feels logical in the moment. If she is pulling away because she doubts your care, then proving your care should fix it. That is the thought process. But it fundamentally misunderstands what attraction is built on. Attraction is not built on how much you care. It is built on respect, on unpredictability, on the sense that you are a man with his own direction, his own standards, and his own life that does not collapse the moment she steps back from it. The moment you beg, you are demonstrating the opposite of all of that. You are showing her that your entire emotional state depends on her presence. And when a woman sees that a man's stability is entirely in her hands, something in her pulls back even harder, because now she is not just managing her own feelings, she is managing yours as well. Nobody is attracted to a project. People are attracted to strength. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus put it plainly when he wrote, "Men are disturbed not by the things which happen, but by the opinions about the things." Read that again. It is not the breakup itself that is destroying you right now. It is the story you are telling yourself about what it means, that you are unlovable, that you will never find this again, that if you do not fix it immediately, you have lost your only chance at happiness. None of that is a fact. All of it is a story your mind built in a moment of panic, and that story is what is driving you to beg. This is the first shift you need to make. Separate what actually happened from the meaning you are assigning to it. What happened is that a relationship changed shape. That is fact. Everything else, the catastrophizing, the certainty that this is the end of the world, that is opinion, and opinion can be examined, questioned, and rebuilt. There is also a difference worth naming here, because most men never stop to ask themselves this question in the moment. Are you missing her, or are you reacting to the loss of control? These feel identical when they hit you at 2 a.m, but they are not the same thing. Missing someone is a quiet, honest ache. It does not demand immediate action. It can sit with you while you still function, while you still go to work, while you still train and eat and sleep on something close to a normal schedule. The panic to fix things right now, the compulsion to check her social media 10 times an hour, the anger that flares up out of nowhere, that is usually not love. That is your ego reacting to losing control of an outcome it assumed it owned. Learning to tell these two feelings apart is one of the most useful skills you can build during this entire process, because only one of them deserves to guide your actions. Let me tell you about 2 men, because this contrast will make everything clear. The first man finds out the woman he loves is pulling away. He panics immediately. He calls her repeatedly. He shows up unannounced. He sends long messages explaining his feelings, asking for one more chance, promising to change everything about himself if she will just come back. He cancels plans with friends to stay available in case she reaches out. He checks his phone every few minutes. Weeks pass like this, and with every unanswered message, his self-respect erodes a little more. By the time she finally responds, if she responds at all, she is not responding to a man she desires. She is responding to a man she now sees as desperate. And desperation is one of the few things that cannot be hidden, no matter how well you word a text message. The second man reacts differently, not because he cares less, but because he understands something the first man does not. He feels the same pain. Do not mistake calm for numbness, but instead of reacting from panic, he pauses. He does not send the message his fear is telling him to send. He gives himself the space to think clearly instead of emotionally. He goes quiet, not as a manipulation tactic, but because he genuinely turns his attention back to his own life, his own goals, his own discipline. He trains. He works. He sees his friends. He rebuilds the version of himself that existed before this relationship consumed his entire identity. And in that silence, something happens that almost never happens when a man is chasing. The woman is left alone with her own thoughts, without the noise of his anxiety filling every gap. She has room to miss him, if there is anything left to miss. And even if she never comes back, that man rebuilds himself into someone stronger than he was before the relationship started. Notice the difference is not in how much either man cared. It is in how each man managed himself. That is the entire game. Marcus Aurelius wrote something that applies directly here. The impediment to action advances the action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Right now, this pain, this loss, feels like the worst thing that could happen to you. But it can become the exact obstacle that forces you to build the discipline, the self-respect, and the emotional command that you will need for the rest of your life in this relationship or the next one. The obstacle is not blocking your path. In a strange way, it is the path. Now let us talk about what actually needs to happen if you want a real chance at getting her back. Because silence alone is not a strategy. Silence is only the foundation. What you build on top of it matters more. The first thing you need to do is stop treating this as an emergency that requires an immediate fix. It is not an emergency. Nothing gets solved by reacting within the first 24 hours of a woman pulling away. In fact, almost everything gets worse when you react in that window, because you are reacting from the most emotionally unstable version of yourself. Give yourself time before you do anything, not to manipulate her, but because you genuinely need it. A decision made from panic is rarely a good decision. The second thing is to get brutally honest with yourself about what actually happened in the relationship. Most men skip this step entirely because it is uncomfortable. They want to jump straight to fixing things without ever asking what broke in the first place. Did you become too available, to the point where you stopped having your own life outside of her? Did you stop growing, stop pursuing your own goals, and let the relationship become the only source of meaning in your life? Did resentment build on either side that was never addressed? Real change requires real diagnosis. You cannot fix what you refuse to look at honestly. The third thing, and this is the one that separates the men who actually turn things around from the men who just disappear and hope, is that you have to use this time to become a man worth returning to. Not performing it. Not faking a transformation to lure her back. Actually becoming it. This means rebuilding physical discipline if you let that slip. It means reconnecting with friendships you neglected while you were absorbed in the relationship. It means pursuing goals and ambitions that exist independent of her, so that your sense of purpose is not hostage to her decisions. This is not about impressing her. It is about becoming someone you respect, regardless of what she decides. Be specific about this, because vague intentions rarely turn into real change. Pick the areas of your life that quietly collapsed while you were consumed by this relationship, and rebuild them one at a time. If your training slipped, get back in the gym on a schedule, not when you feel like it. If you stopped seeing friends because every free hour went to her, reach out and rebuild those bonds, even if it feels awkward at first after months of distance. If you had ambitions you shelved, a business idea, a certification, a move you were planning, pick them back up. None of this is about proving anything to her. She may never see any of it. Do it because a man who has rebuilt his own foundation carries himself differently, and that difference is not something you can fake in a text message. It shows up in how you speak, how you carry your shoulders, how quickly you respond to things that used to bother you. People notice that shift even when they cannot name what changed. Also, pay attention to what you consume during this period, because it shapes your mindset more than most men realize. If you spend every night watching her social media, replaying old messages, or listening to music that keeps the wound open, you are actively working against the man you are trying to become. This does not mean you need to pretend she never existed. It means you stop feeding the version of yourself that wants to stay stuck in the pain, because that version of you cannot build anything, The version of you that reads, trains, works, and reconnects with people who care about him is the version that actually moves forward, with or without her. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." Most of what you are afraid of right now, the idea that you will never recover, that no one else will ever want you, that this feeling of loss is permanent, exists only in your imagination. The reality is almost always more survivable than the story your fear is telling you. Men have gone through worse than this and rebuilt entire lives. You are not the exception to that pattern. You are simply in the middle of it, and the middle always feels like the worst part. There is one more obstacle worth addressing directly, because it derails more men than almost anything else during this process. And that is the advice coming from everyone around you. Friends will tell you to move on immediately and start dating other people to prove a point. Others will tell you to fight for it, to show up, to make a grand gesture before it is too late. Family members will offer opinions shaped by their own relationship history, not yours. All of this noise is well-intentioned, and almost none of it is built for your specific situation. The Stoics were deeply skeptical of outsourcing your judgment to the opinions of a crowd, because a crowd is rarely thinking clearly about anyone's life but its own. Pythagoras is said to have taught his students to spend time in silent reflection before acting on strong emotion, precisely so that noise from others and from their own racing thoughts would not be mistaken for wisdom. You do not need 20 opinions right now. You need one clear head, and that head has to be yours, built through the kind of quiet reflection most men actively avoid because it is uncomfortable to sit with. This does not mean you isolate yourself from everyone who cares about you. It means you stop treating every piece of advice as instructions to follow immediately. Listen, consider, and then decide based on the principles we have already covered. Not based on whoever spoke to you most recently or most loudly. Now, here is something you need to hear clearly, because I am not going to sell you a fantasy. Sometimes, even when you do everything right, even when you master your reactions, rebuild your life, and become the calmest, strongest version of yourself, she does not come back. That is a real possibility, and pretending otherwise would be dishonest. But here is what almost nobody tells men in this situation. If you do this correctly, walking away without begging, disciplining yourself instead of chasing, rebuilding your standards instead of lowering them, you do not lose either way. If she comes back, she is coming back to a man who did not abandon himself to keep her. That relationship starts on a foundation of respect instead of desperation, and it will be stronger for it. If she does not come back, you are left with a version of yourself that is more disciplined, more self-respecting, and more emotionally solid than the man who existed before this happened. That man is more attractive to the next woman who enters his life, and more importantly, he is a man who likes himself again. This is the part most self-help content in this space gets wrong. They frame this entire process as a strategy to manipulate a specific outcome, get her back at all costs, using silence as a trick, using space as a weapon. That is not what this is. If you approach this as a manipulation tactic, she will feel it, because people can sense performance from genuine change from a mile away. The silence has to be real. The self-work has to be real. You are not doing this to win a game against her. You are doing this because it is the correct way for a man to carry himself through loss, regardless of the outcome. Let's go deeper into why most men struggle so much with this, because understanding the root of it will help you break the pattern permanently, not just in this relationship, but in every relationship going forward. Many men were never taught how to sit with discomfort. From a young age, discomfort was something to be solved immediately, distracted from, or avoided. So, when a relationship starts to hurt, the instinct is to make the pain stop as fast as possible. And the fastest apparent solution is to reach out, to fix it, to say whatever needs to be said to make the anxiety go away right now. But that instinct, the need for immediate relief, is exactly what destroys your position. The men who handle this well are not men who feel less pain. They are men who have trained themselves to tolerate discomfort without needing to react to it immediately. That tolerance is a skill, and like any skill, it can be built. One way to build it is through a practice the Stoics used constantly, examining your own thoughts before acting on them. When the urge to text her hits, and it will hit, hard and often, do not act on it immediately. Instead, ask yourself what you are actually trying to accomplish with that message. Are you trying to communicate something necessary, or are you trying to relieve your own anxiety by getting a response from her? In almost every case, in the early days after a pullback or breakup, it is the second one. You are not trying to solve anything. You are trying to make the discomfort of not knowing stop, recognizing that difference, out loud if you have to, is often enough to stop yourself from sending something you will regret. Another practice worth adopting is journaling through the urge instead of acting on it. When you feel the pull to reach out, write down exactly what you are feeling and what you want to say. Get it all out on paper. Then wait 24 hours before deciding whether it still needs to be said. Most of the time, after that pause, you will read back what you wrote and realize it came from panic, not clarity. This single habit alone will save you from most of the mistakes that destroy a man's position after a breakup or a pullback. There is another moment that tests every man going through this, and it deserves its own attention here, because almost nobody prepares you for it. At some point, you may see her move on, whether that means a new photo online, a mutual friend mentioning she has been seeing someone, or simply hearing that she seems happy without you. This moment can undo weeks of discipline in a single afternoon if you are not ready for it. The instinct is to spiral, to interpret her moving on as proof that everything you have been building was pointless, or worse, to reach out in anger or desperation the moment you see it. Understand something clearly here. Her moving on, or appearing to, says almost nothing about your worth, and it says very little about whether the work you are doing matters. People process endings differently, and outward appearance is rarely the full picture of what someone is actually feeling. More importantly, what she does next is entirely outside your control, and the Stoics were relentless about this single idea. That peace comes from focusing only on what is within your own power and releasing your grip on everything else. Her choices are hers. Your reaction to those choices is the only thing that was ever actually yours to command. If you find yourself checking for updates on her life constantly, that is a signal. Not that you need more information, but that you need to redirect that attention back toward your own progress immediately. Remove the sources of that information if you have to. Mute her, unfollow for a while, ask mutual friends to stop passing along updates. This is not weakness. It is the same discipline as stepping away from a drink you are trying not to have. You are simply removing the trigger so your judgment has room to stay clear. Let's also talk about what happens on the other side of this, because eventually, if enough time passes and you have done the work, there may be an opening, a message from her, a moment of contact, a chance encounter. How you handle that moment matters just as much as how you handled the silence before it. The instinct many men have here is to flood that opening with everything they have been holding back. All the feelings, all the promises, all the explanations. Do not do this. If an opening appears, meet it with the same calm, grounded energy you have been building the entire time. Engage, but do not collapse into the old pattern the moment she shows any sign of warmth. This is often where men undo weeks of real progress in a single conversation, because the moment she softens even slightly, they mistake it for permission to go back to full intensity immediately. Let things rebuild slowly. Trust takes time to reconstruct, and rushing it recreates the exact imbalance that contributed to the original problem. I also want to address something directly, because I know some of you watching this are thinking it. This is not about being cold, distant, or emotionally unavailable as a permanent personality. Stoicism is often misunderstood as suppressing emotion entirely, becoming a man who feels nothing. That is not what this philosophy teaches, and it is not what I am teaching you here. You are allowed to feel this pain fully. You are allowed to grieve the relationship, to miss her, to feel the weight of what has changed. The goal is not to eliminate the feeling. The goal is to stop the feeling from making decisions for you. Feel it completely, in private, in the gym, in conversations with people you trust, in journaling, in whatever outlet works for you. Just do not let it dictate your actions toward her. That distinction, feeling everything while still acting with discipline, is the entire foundation of what you are building here. Now, let's bring this back to the practical steps, laid out clearly so you know exactly what to do starting today. Step 1. Stop all contact that is driven by panic. This does not mean you can never speak to her again. It means you stop reaching out from a place of anxiety, checking in, apologizing repeatedly, asking where things stand. If communication needs to happen, let it be calm, brief, and purposeful, not a flood of emotion disguised as a conversation. Step 2. Redirect the energy you were spending on her back into your own life. Physical training, career goals, friendships, hobbies you let go of. Not as a performance for her benefit, but because this is genuinely what rebuilding yourself looks like. This step alone changes more than almost anything else on this list because it restores the sense of identity that likely eroded during the relationship. Step 3. Get honest, in writing if you need to, about what actually happened in the relationship. Not to torture yourself with blame, but to understand the real pattern so you do not repeat it, whether with her or with someone else in the future. Write down the moments where you felt the connection strongest, and the moments where you felt it start to fade. Look for the pattern honestly, without assigning all the blame to her and without assigning all the blame to yourself. Most relationships fade for reasons on both sides, and pretending otherwise in either direction only sets you up to repeat the same mistakes with the next person who matters to you. Step 4. Build a daily practice of examining your urges before acting on them. When the impulse to reach out hits, pause, Ask what you are actually trying to solve, and give yourself space before responding to that impulse. Step 5. If an opening appears, meet it with the same calm you have built the entire time. Do not collapse into old patterns the moment she shows warmth. Let trust rebuild at its own pace. Step 6, and this is the one that ties everything together. Detach your sense of self-worth from the outcome. This is the hardest step on this entire list, because it goes against every instinct telling you that your worth is riding on whether she comes back. It is not. Your worth was never actually hers to assign in the first place, and it will not be assigned by the next woman either. Do this correctly, and regardless of whether she returns, you come out of this a stronger, more grounded version of yourself than the one who started this process, and that version of you carries into every relationship, every job, every hard conversation you face for the rest of your life. This is not a skill you build once and discard. It is one you will draw on again and again, long after this particular situation is resolved one way or another. I want to leave you with one final thought, because I think it matters more than anything else in this video. Getting her back is not actually the goal. It feels like the goal right now, because the pain of losing her is so loud that it drowns out everything else. But the real goal, the one that will actually change your life, is becoming a man who does not lose himself when he loses something he wants. That is a skill that will serve you in this relationship, in the next one, in your career, in every hard moment life throws at you from here forward. The woman who eventually stays, whether it is her or someone else, will be responding to that man. The calm one. The one who did not beg. The one who felt everything and still stood on his own 2 feet. That is the man this philosophy builds. Not overnight, and not without discomfort. But it builds him, if you follow it with real discipline instead of using it as a shortcut to manipulate an outcome. One last thing before we close, because I want to be honest about timelines, since so much content in this space promises fast results that rarely hold up in reality. This is not a 7-day process. Do not measure your progress by whether she has reached out by a certain date. Measure it by whether you are training consistently, whether you are sleeping better, whether the panic that used to hit you every hour now only hits you once a day, then once every few days. Those are the real markers of progress. The outcome with her, whatever it ends up being, will take care of itself far better when it is not being forced on someone else's timeline, especially not the timeline your fear wants to impose. Patience is not passive here. It is one of the most active disciplines a man can practice, because every single day you do not react from panic is a day you are actively choosing strength over fear. That adds up faster than you think. If this gave you clarity, subscribe. I release videos like this every single week, built on principles that have outlasted empires because they are built on truth instead of trends. And if you are in this exact situation right now, drop a comment and tell me where you are in the process. I read every single one, and some of you are going to need to hear this again more than once before it fully sinks in. That is normal. Just keep coming back to it until it does.